Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Every now and again, we hear a story about DNA being used years later to convict someone or to solve a crime. And Mark Phillip, a good friend of mine, sent me notes. And Steve, check this one out. Man charged with murder after a DNA match 60 years after the fact. Chloe Harcum wrote this for the BBC. A 92-year-old man was charged with attacking and killing an elderly widow after police found a 1,000,000,000-to-1 DNA match on her clothing almost 60 years later. This is a murder case. The 75-year-old woman was found strangled back in 1967. So what were you doing in 1967? Some of my audience will have to say, wasn't here yet. Other members will say, oh yeah, I remember where I was. That was quite a while ago. So the man appeared at Bristol Crown Court on Monday. Jurors were told that he had previously been jailed for similar attacks on elderly women back in 1977. At the time of her death, swabs were taken from the victim's body, which tested positive for human organic material, but scientific examination back then was limited. So in 2023, the case was reopened and re-examined, and they tested those swabs for DNA, and it matched this defendant. He's accused of forcing entry into her home, attacking her, and killing her. Jurors heard that the victim was using her front room as a bedroom, and she was found lying on a pile of old clothes by neighbors. So there are prosecutors on one side, defense attorneys on the other. The prosecutor told the court a number of local women were worried about the victim because they had not seen her that morning. The fact that she wasn't out on the doorstep was unusual for her. So two of the locals then went over and found the front door shut and the sash window near the front door open as far as possible. And by looking in through the window, they saw the victim. And so they did what they could to see if they could help her, and they realized she was dead, and they contacted the authorities. So jurors heard that swabs were taken of her body, which returned positive results, again, for, like I said, the organic material. But scientific examination back then was limited. And, it's kind of like in the old days, they could do like a blood test of a blood type, and they'd say, yes, this is the blood type. Okay, that narrows it down a little, but not conclusively. And they said here that, no, the DNA here is conclusive. So the court also heard that there was a palm print from a window, which was compared to thousands of people back then, but they found no matches. But it was the DNA testing that did it. So the court said that the matching of the DNA meant that it was 1,000,000,000 times more likely to be the defendant's than that of someone else. Now, of course, someone's going to go, gee, 1,000,000,000? That's all? It's more than 1,000,000,000 people on Earth. Maybe there's someone else out there who could be a match. But mathematically, it seemed pretty odd. So the jury was told that the defendant had been jailed for similar attacks as this one, and that he also asked for a further 10 offenses of overnight burglaries of homes where his fingerprints had been found to be taken into account when he was sentenced back in the 70s. So they're saying the guy did a whole bunch of these kinds of things. And so the prosecution told the jury, we say these offenses demonstrate to all of us that the defendant has a tendency to act in exactly the same way that we say that he did back in 1967. In other words, to break into people's homes at night and to target elderly women living alone, and then violence. So behavior that he'd already used, we suggest, back in 1967. The difference being that in this case, his violence killed her. Now, this case is still ongoing. And I'm right now telling Mark Phillip to follow this for me, just in case I miss it, because it's in the BBC. But I do find it fascinating. And now some people are going to ask and go, wait a second, Steve, if you can put in evidence of previous convictions to show that he's guilty here, that means that somebody's been convicted before of something. You just keep bringing them back in and reconvicting them because, hey, they did it before, they do it again, right? Well, there are some extremely strict rules. And I'm talking about the American rules, but I'm pretty sure they're similar in England. And that is that you can bring in evidence of prior habit or behavior if you can show that somebody has acted a certain way previously and it was something they did. And then on this date, the defendant or the perpetrator did it. And we think that the fact that the perpetrator did it and the defendant did it previously could lead you to the conclusion that, yes, the defendant did it this time. You don't have to find that, but you could find that. But again, there's a whole section in the rules of evidence regarding habit, routine, and prior acts. And they talk about that. And so it depends on what kind of things it is. So, let's suppose, for instance, that somebody is committing crimes, and at every single crime scene, they carve something in the wall and then leave a calling card, like a playing card out of a deck of cards. Okay? Just making something up here. But you might see that in a comic book, And so they have a series of these crimes, and somebody gets convicted for it. And the person then gets out of jail, and another crime using the same calling card and the carving on the wall. I mean, you go, okay. You go, but Steve, that could be a copycat. It could be a copycat. So that's why these things are considered to be presumptions, meaning a jury can consider them, but they don't have to consider them. But here, they're saying it's the MO. It's the MO. It's the person finding a home where an elderly woman lived and climbing in through a window and then attacking them and doing that. And it's in a particular area. And the guy, according to them, was convicted of that back during this time frame. So they're suggesting that, in fact, this guy could be a one-man crime spree. And they got him for a bunch of earlier attacks, but they weren't murders. And so the guy, eventually got back out, I guess. But now they're saying, but we can hang this one on him because it's an actual murder. And keep in mind that in most cases, murder has no statute of limitations, meaning they can get you anytime. So occasionally you hear about people who got busted years and decades later for murder, but it wouldn't have stuck for something else necessarily. So it's a wild case. But it happened in 1967. 1967. And so when I think of the early 60s, the mid 60s, I think of two primary events that I can place in my head. And 1967 was the riots in Detroit. 1968 was the Tigers winning the World Series. But it's the 67 riots that I remember quite clearly because for a little while that summer, it was all over the news that there were riots downtown Detroit. And, of course, they're saying this crime here happened in June, late June of 1967. So I can remember where I was, but that was a long time ago. So, Mark Phillip, thanks for sending that. Please keep an eye on it. But man charged with murder after DNA match 60 years on. Chloe Harcum wrote that for the BBC. Questions or comments? Put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. As a child, my family's menu consisted of two choices: take it or leave it.